One thought, every game. Let's take a look at what happened last night. KC Joyner here to break it down, NFL Insider. And, of course, every Eagle fan was watching last night as Dallas loses 31-24. Now, the final score, Casey, not really indicative of that game. So let's get your take on what is going on with Dallas down the stretch here, because they clearly have a more talented record than their roster than their 6-7 record suggests.
They still look like, even though they had a week's worth, they and Chicago both had a week's worth of rest for this game. They both played on Thanksgiving, so they both had a week's worth of rest. But they still look like, after the first drive, that they just weren't. They were tired. They weren't motivated. I mean, this is where a team isn't playing to its talent level. And when you have so many questions about the coach, it's the old thing about players. If the players, once a player thinks that the coach doesn't know what he's doing, or they lose faith in the coach for one reason or another, there's something about it that they don't believe in, that's it for the coach. The coach is done, and usually the team will be done too. And I think last night was after Jerry Jones said what he said last week. I think the Cowboys players are starting to question, is this guy really what we should be, is he good enough to be our coach? And I think that is it as much as anything. They're just not going to play their talent level. I would be surprised if they lose the rest of their games.
Wow. So they've lost 3 in a row. They play the Rams coming up. They play Philly after that, and then Washington. You know, Philly and Dallas both still very much alive in this. They play each other coming up. Who feels better right now? They both lost 3 in a row, but who feels better?
If I'm the Eagles, I feel better, if for nothing else, because Cowboys haven't been dealing with many injuries, and now the Eagles are starting to get healthier, and some of their woes have been, when you've got the injured receivers out there. A couple of games ago, and the receiving core they had, there was just it's nobody in your starting lineup. So now that you're starting to get healthier, and assuming, I don't know if Howard's going to play this week or not, but if you get both running backs back, I mean, you're starting to get there, and the Eagles can look at that and say, that's part of our situation there. And again, the Cowboys have had situations where if their players are just not playing to their talent level. And plus, not only that, and I know last night was because they fell behind and they had to throw a lot to catch up, but now that's the 4th time in 5 games that Dak Prescott has thrown 40 or more passes. That's not who you are. It's not who you should be with Ezekiel Elliott in your backfield. And I think the Cowboys have just lost sight of what they should be, and so we're getting too thrilled on the passing game, and that's part of when you add to the other elements that they're just not going to be who they should be and not play their talent level.
Yeah, and we also know, though, their defense didn't look like they were very interested in tackling much last night either.
They absolutely did not. They did not look like they were, and they haven't looked like they're interested in tackling or pass rushing. Their defense it's lost on because everybody sees the offense and they're used to Zeke and the Dak, and that's where your big names are. But on defense, they've not played nearly as well, and I've been lowering their player grades. I've got my coverage grades for red, yellow, green for coverage grades. I've been lowering them from they'd had some red grades in their secondary earlier to now they're getting the greens, and they can't cover the tight end at all, and that was before Heath had been banged up and things, and even their free safety had been a red-rated free safety in my system for most of the season. He's been dropped down as well, so they don't want to tackle. They're not covering well. Hey, look, Allen Robinson's a very good receiver, and Miller is what he is, but you allow 3 touchdown passes to those guys. They didn't have a tight end to speak of, and Robinson is good. He's a good receiver, but you should be able to slow him down because it's a one-dimensional passing game. And they made Trubisky they make it look like the Bears should bring him back, which he's been playing better, but that says so much about where the Cowboys are. But when you see them yelling at the coach on the sideline, I think that says a lot too. They know this thing's over.
KC Joyner taking a look last night. What a game. The Bears have had their issues this year, but what are you seeing from them that's kind of turned they're 7-6, and I guess they're, I don't want to say very much alive, but they've kept their playoff hopes at least on life support.
I've been thinking about with Trubisky and such, where when he comes out of college, if you look at it, remember the Parcells rules that talk about the 7 rules that Bill Parcells used to draft quarterbacks? One of those rules is that a quarterback should play 3 years in college, and the Parcells' idea, and he got this from previous personnel guys too. He built upon that. I talked about it a few years ago, and he said he got it from like Bucko Kilroy and Mike Holloway, guys who were in the '60s personnel guys, and they looked and said, why we want this is because we want our quarterback to have 3 years worth of learning in college. We want him to have learned how to play quarterback at that level, to teach him what they can at that level. And then when we get and we have fewer things to teach him, we can just start giving advanced teaching, as it were. Trubisky only played one season in college, and so when you look at him and say, well, geez, he's doing terrible things. Yeah, he's making up for what he didn't get in college. So I look at that and say that maybe we're too quick to throw the towel in on Trubisky. No, he hasn't been Patrick Mahomes. No, he hasn't been Lamar Jackson, but he's also had coaching situations and such, and he's had some other issues, and he didn't have as much time under center. So I think maybe last night was an indicator that we ought to give him a little more of a chance than we've given him so far.
So are the Dallas fixes more personnel, or is this kind of like the coaching staff has lost the roster at this point? Or do you think that, hey, there's a couple tweaks that we can fix this, and what we have coming up, the Rams, Philly, and Washington, get ourselves back on track?
If he took Mike Tomlin and if he was able to do the type of coaching job he's done in Pittsburgh this year, and I know I bashed him in past years, but if he did the coaching job that he's done this year, getting the most out of his talent, if you put him down in Dallas and could transfer that whole thing, obviously it's different organizations and you can't necessarily do it, but if you could do that and say take this roster and put it under Tomlin, he'd win 10, 11 games with them right now. So I think it's almost all coaching. I think that Garrett's just situationally he's not very good. The team doesn't believe it. In fact, I saw some posts on Twitter last week. They said, what special thing does he do? He's not a great play caller. He's got he's not even calling the plays now, as I understand it. He's not a great play caller. He's not a great motivator. He's not a great he's not like Belichick where he just finds these great insights as to how we're going to attack defense. It's none of this. So it's like, okay, what's the guy doing? He's just there, and Jerry Jones is essentially the head coach. And if you got the owner being the head coach really can't do that job. The players will eventually see through that, and that's why the Cowboys are where they are, because they don't give their head coach enough autonomy to do his job.
Have you not seen how he claps, Casey? Have you not been impressed by his clapping?
He's a good spitter, too.
Come on now.
That's green rated. That's blue rated clapping in my category. They need an organizational change there. Jerry just needs to realize that he wants to be involved in the personnel touch. He wants to do it, and he can, but it's not whether or not you can. I've had arguments with people with like, well, he's the owner. He can do what he wants. Right, he can do what he wants, but is it the right thing to do? If you're not winning with this system, then stop doing it and put a head coach in place and step back and say, you be the coach, and Al Davis did it in Oakland for years. He was very hands-on, but he still let John Madden run his team, and that's what Jerry Jones needs to do, but I don't think where he's at in his life he's going to do that.
All right, let's take a look at Week 14, get one thought on every game as we take a look at Week 14 slate right here on the Sports Bash. All right, Carolina's playing Atlanta. Both these teams kind of out of it here. Carolina fires the coach, Atlanta at home. They had played well for a couple of weeks and then fell apart.
They did. Carolina's run defense, though, has been brutal. It's been atrocious. I don't think now with their coach gone, I think they're probably not going to try anywhere near as hard. So even though Atlanta's having its problems, I think Carolina, what's going on there, I have a feeling that you could see 200 rushing yards against them. I'll take Atlanta.
All right, Baltimore, Buffalo, good one. We're going to learn a lot about Buffalo here. Baltimore on the road. I like Roman against McDermott.
I do, and I'm still going to make Baltimore in this contest, but if people go to my Twitter feed at KC Joyner TFS, I retweeted out something from a coach named James Light, who talked about a way that Buffalo could attack this system. Essentially, he says go after Jackson, just have your players go and try and hit him as often as possible. There's a lot more to it than that, but I think Buffalo is going to do that. So I think Baltimore wins, but I think Buffalo is going to set a blueprint for this is how you slow this offense down.
Battle of Ohio. Cleveland, I guess, still has a very slim playoff possibility here.
They do, and Cincinnati looks better with Dalton under center. It's obvious he should have been under center the whole time. Cleveland, though, I see too many advantages there. The Bengals have all their offensive line issues, their defensive issues, the green rated run defense. I just see enough firepower there for Cleveland to get a higher score against Cincinnati.
All right, up next, it's NFC Washington looking for 3 in a row. Green Bay at the top of the division. They can't afford to slip up here. Can Washington make it 3 straight on the road at Lambeau?
Green Bay's run defense has been bad. They are not there. They're making a lot of mistakes in defense, giving up a high good block rate. And Washington, Darius Geis looks terrific. And mind you, Peterson is a change of pace back there. But if you can have 2 power running backs like that going against that defense, I bet Green Bay gets their hands full in this contest. I still think they win because it's at Green Bay and they got more talent. But I bet this is going to be a field goal game rather than a lot bigger spread than people think.
Interesting. Haskins, of course, making a start again for Washington. Miami, New York. Jets at home. They have won 3 straight. They lose to Cincinnati. Miami has obviously played a lot better football.
They have. They're going to be aggressive, and so will the Jets. And the Jets, do they do what they did last week and not take their opponent seriously? I don't think they don't take Miami seriously, but I don't think they're going to be to stop Parker. They're the whole secondary. It looks like they might have a guy named Nate Hairston covering him, where they might have Darryl Roberts. I mean, if Darryl Roberts plays, they don't know who's going to slow him down. Having said that, I think the Jets still have more firepower on offense, and Miami's now down to Patrick Laird as their top running back, so I think the Jets win.
The intern!
The intern. There you go. Indy taking on Tampa. Indy here, I mean, they were a hot pick all of a sudden. They've kind of fallen off here, and you never know what Tampa you're going to get.
You don't. Marlon Mack coming back is a big thing for the Colts. Williams did well for a time, but he didn't even get a touch last week in the second half, so obviously he was a one and done. But if you get Mack back, and if he can play a full series, a full game, and they say we're not going to have any limitations on him, you give him 20 touches, I think Indy wins that game. So as long as Mack stays healthy, I'll take the Colts.
Denver, Houston. Houston got one of their biggest wins. I mean, they finally beat the Patriots, and this is kind of a letdown feeling for me here. Does the Texans let down against Denver?
It has trap game written on it, but I mean Denver. Locke did well last week, but he's got Cortland Sutton, and suddenly he looks like you could put anybody out at quarterback, and I think Cortland Sutton could catch 10 passes.
That kid can play.
Yeah, he really can. But Lindsey's not playing quite as well, and I just don't. I mean, the Denver defense. Chris Harris has had a terrible year. People talk about him like he's a great cornerback. He's not this year. He's having a really subpar year. And if you don't have Chris Harris at top speed, you're not going to slow down Houston.
All right, up next, the Chargers, Jacksonville. This one, these two just kind of point out the string, but I guess Gardner Minshew takes back over.
Minshew mania, and Minshew wasn't a great quarterback. It wasn't fantastic, but you could sense the fire and the spark that the Jacksonville Jaguars offense had when he was out there. You could see the players gravitating to him in a way they just didn't gravitate to Foles. No offense to Foles, it didn't seem to take it the same way. Having said that, and it's a cross-country game, and man, it's tough. I think I'm going to pick the Jaguars in that one, just because it is a cross-country game, and I don't trust the Chargers to play to their talent level. But if they play to their talent level, the Chargers should.
What do they do with that Foles contract?
Hey, you made a mistake in signing. If you make a mistake, you're just going to move on. If you think he's not the guy, you have to take the hit and all that. And if you can trade him. But you don't sit there and say we're going to play him because we got the big contract. It's the worst thing you could do, because now you're just compounding the error. If you made the mistake, take your $50 million loss and move on.
Take your $50 million loss.
Well, when your starting quarterback is Minshew and he's only making $250,000 a year, it's the same thing. It's just
why
reverse.
they only have 20 wrestlers in AEW, Casey.
Hey, that's what you can do. Foles can go there. He can, hey Cody, he can team with Cody.
That's right. He'd be a good on the mic. He could cut a good promo, if you will.
He's got pro wrestling written all over him.
How's everybody doing? Tennessee taking on Oakland. I guess Oakland, they kind of fell apart a little bit here, but Tennessee, that's a team I like here on the road. I actually think that Tennessee can win that division still.
I think they can, and rushing game and defense travels well, and I know it's in Oakland, but Derrick Henry he's a phenom right now. You look at his numbers the past 3 weeks. I think he's rushed for almost 600 yards the past 3 weeks. It's been just tremendous. And I don't think that the Raiders have the run defense to stop him. And not that, but with Tannehill playing like he has, and he's got their receivers, because they've got a more talented receiving core that they had shown under Mariota, you add all that together, and just Oakland's not playing to its talent level, I'll take Titans.
Big one here, KC, New England, and the Patriots. I feel like all of a sudden people are starting to say, I don't believe in the Patriots. But do they lose at home here?
It's going to be a defining game, I think, where you're going to learn a lot about one of these teams. Because remember, New England, for the first half of the AFC Championship game last year, they held Kansas City's offense in check, and then the second half, they didn't do anything to stop them. So I'm curious because obviously their talent isn't as good as we thought it was, because early in the year they play on all these scrub teams, and now they're playing good teams, and they're not playing nearly as well. But I think we're going to learn something about New England. We're going to learn something about Kansas City, and I have a feeling that Kansas City's I'm still going to pick New England because it's at home.
No, you were on the right track. Pick KC. They're winning that game.
In all things equal, I'm going to take the home team, so I'm going to take it for that purpose. I won't be surprised though if we finally realize that the Patriots defense wasn't the 1985 Bears like I thought it was.
Well, a classic Super Bowl rematch: Steelers and Cardinals. We all remember that one. Cardinals at home, Pittsburgh still in the wild card race in the AFC.
They are, and it's Duck, and they're facing a bad defense. But, hey, the Steelers are play calling their way to wins. They're motivating their way to wins, and plus they've got such a great defense. And Arizona's played very well of late, and Drake is playing better, and now they've got a running game again, even though David Johnson was what he was. But the Steelers have a red-rated run defense. They can shut down the receivers. I think their defense carries them to enough, and Duck hits a pass play or two to James Washington against a very bad Arizona secondary.
I smell a James Harrison 100-yard interception return.
Hey, as long as it's, let me see, if it's Minkah Fitzpatrick, my fantasy team will be thankful.
There you go. All right. Then Sunday night, Seattle, L.A. L.A. still hanging around this wild card race. Seattle is the top team in the NFC West, but a loss here could make things very interesting if the Rams could pull off a win.
The Rams need to turn this game into a shootout. I know they don't want to really trust Goff anymore than they have to, and Cooks has been that's a big part of what their offense is, because they need to tear the top off the defense kind of guy. Kupp's played well. Woods has played better of late, but Cooks has been, and I know it's banged up and he's had the injuries and such, and maybe that's why he moved from team to team, that they didn't think he could stay healthy, but it's been a difference maker for their team. The Rams now have a running game, and that's great, but Seattle's got a two-headed running game, and they still have Wilson, and they still can hit on bigger plays in the passing game than they have of late. Tyler Lockett's not going to get shut out again, so I'll take Seattle on that one.
All right, and then, of course, Monday night, we'll have more on that with KC on the Monday show, Giants and Philly. Just a quick kind of overview, as we know that Eli Manning, do you think that changes anything in this game?
I've been telling anybody who has a Giant, who's thinking to play an Evan Ingram or any Giants wide receivers in fantasy football, to stay far away, because I don't trust Eli at all. Having said that, their big thing is, can Barkley be what he was? I think he's either banged up or something's happened. He's not the same back as he was last year. And if they don't get him going, and I don't think they're going to be able to do it against Philadelphia, I think the whole dynamic of their team is changed. So, because you can't make yourself a Barkley-centric offense and have him banged up and win. So, given it away early, but I think the Eagles have one question to answer in this contest.
All right. It'll be Eagles-Giants Monday, and, of course, we'll have more on all the Week 14 games. And that one Monday with KC Joyner here on the Sports Bash. Enjoy the football this weekend.
You too, man. Appreciate it.
All right, like all guests, KC Joyner appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.